The crack of an AK-47 shattered the afternoon calm at Fairfield Airport at 2:32 p.m. Mason Brooks, a massive man with a snake tattoo coiling around his neck, kicked hard at the cleaning cart of the woman mopping the floor. Dirty water splashed across her worn janitor's uniform. "Get out of here, worthless trash," Mason growled, pointing his rifle at Rachel Thompson, a thin woman with her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Rachel dropped to her knees, trembling, as she picked up each soaked rag. Her hands gripped the mop handle as if it were her only anchor. "I'm sorry. I'll leave right away," she whispered weakly. But as she bent down, her eyes caught the radar display reflected in the glass door. 3 bright dots approaching at 230 knots. Commercial aircraft. On final approach. Connor Davis, a young gunman with a long scar across his cheek, kicked Rachel's water bucket. "Why haven't you left yet? Want to die?" The other gangsters laughed as Rachel stumbled and fell to her knees. She mumbled apologies, hurriedly pushing her cart toward the exit, but her finger subtly touched the Bluetooth earpiece hidden beneath her hair, connected directly to the emergency frequency 121.5 megahertz she'd been monitoring for 2 years. In the next 20 minutes, they would understand why the United States Air Force once called her Ghost Eagle, and why she accepted working as a janitor at the very place where she once took off with pride. Rachel pushed her cleaning cart into the hallway, but stopped behind the half-open door. Her posture shifted subtly, shoulders a bit straighter, feet positioned at 45 degrees. It was the alert stance any soldier would recognize, but in her shabby janitor's uniform, no one noticed. Mason turned back to his crew. "Connor, watch the control tower door. Blake, secure gate 5. Dylan, Ethan, with me." The terminal had at least 30 people. Passengers, airport staff, flight crew. Some were families with children, others business travelers caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Lily Anderson, a young flight attendant with blonde hair tied back neatly, stood frozen by the check-in counter, her face pale as paper. Captain Bradley Scott lay on the floor, blood seeping from a head wound after his brave but futile attempt to resist. Blake Harrison, the gangster with a skull tattoo covering his entire left forearm, noticed Rachel trying to observe through the door crack. He strode over, his heavy boots echoing on the polished floor, and grabbed a fistful of her hair, yanking her out into the open. "What are you looking at, you pathetic cleaning woman?" Blake mocked, his breath reeking of cigarettes and cheap whiskey. "Think you're some kind of hero? Think you're going to save everyone?" Rachel didn't answer, just lowered her head submissively. Blake shoved her toward the cleaning cart with enough force to make her stumble. "Clean up that filthy water, now! And if I see you snooping around again, you'll be mopping up your own blood." As Rachel knelt to wipe the floor, she folded the cloth in a very specific way, folded in half, then in thirds, creating a perfect rectangle with corners aligned precisely. It was military regulation folding, drilled into muscle memory through thousands of repetitions, but Blake was too busy laughing at her apparent weakness to notice such details. Dylan Carter, a large man with a thick beard and prison tattoos visible on his neck, approached Rachel with heavy steps. "Check her pockets," he told Ethan Miller, his voice rough from years of smoking. Ethan, thin and tall with dark sunglasses that never left his face, roughly grabbed Rachel's worn canvas bag and dumped its contents on the floor. Some loose change clattered across the tiles. $2.37. A pack of tissues, cheap drugstore lipstick, a broken flip phone from 2010, and a faded photograph that landed face down. "Nothing but garbage," Ethan sneered, kicking the items across the floor. "Look at this ancient phone. What are you, stuck in the Stone Age?" Rachel scrambled to collect her belongings, her movements deliberately clumsy and slow. But when she reached for the photograph, her hand paused for just a fraction of a second before picking it up and quickly sliding it into her pocket. Nobody noticed except Samuel Jackson, a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran sitting in the corner, who recognized that particular type of careful movement, the kind you use when handling something precious and dangerous. Lily Anderson moved closer to Rachel from the check-in counter, her designer heels clicking softly. She knelt down, helping Rachel gather the scattered coins. "Are you okay?" she whispered, genuine concern in her voice. Rachel nodded weakly, continuing to mop the floor with shaking hands. But Lily noticed something strange. Despite the trembling, Rachel's movements were oddly efficient, covering maximum area with minimum effort. The way she positioned herself, she could see every exit, every gunman, every potential threat or asset in the terminal. It was like watching someone play three-dimensional chess while pretending to play checkers. The The terminal's speakers crackled to life. Major Ashley Chen's voice from the control tower rang out, professional, but with an undertone of barely controlled fear. Attention all personnel and passengers, we have a security situation. All flights are temporarily grounded. Please remain calm and follow all instructions. Mason Brooks laughed, the sound harsh and grating. He climbed onto a check-in desk, his assault rifle raised high above his head. That's right. This airport belongs to me now. My demands are simple. $10 million in unmarked bills or those planes. He pointed dramatically out the massive windows, where 3 Boeing 737s were visible circling in holding patterns. We'll never touch the ground safely. You have 1 hour. Rachel's trained eye tracked the aircraft through the window. She could read their fuel situation in their flight patterns, the subtle changes in altitude, the tightening of their holding patterns. At current fuel consumption rates with the deteriorating weather conditions, they had 35 minutes maximum before they'd be forced to attempt landing regardless of the situation on the ground. 381 souls hanging in the balance. If you enjoy stories about silent heroes and military secrets, subscribe to the channel now. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next exciting videos. Like and comment below. What do you think got Rachel grounded? Share this video with your friends if you want them to see this incredible story. Colonel Arthur Wells, commanding officer of Travis Air Force Base, stood in the far corner of the terminal. He wore civilian clothes, khakis and a golf shirt, on his way to a Joint Chiefs meeting in Washington. When he saw Blake push Rachel down yet again, sending her sprawling across the wet floor, he merely shrugged with obvious contempt. To him, she was just another minimum wage worker, weak and irrelevant to the current crisis. His concern was for the important people, the business class passengers, the pilots, people who mattered in his worldview. Ethan Miller approached where Rachel was cleaning near the panoramic windows. The pool of blood from Captain Bradley had spread across the white tiles, creating a stark crimson abstract pattern. "Hey, janitor lady," he barked, pointing at the blood with his gun barrel. "Clean this mess up. And I mean spotless. The sight of blood makes me twitchy. And trust me, you don't want to see me when I'm twitchy." Rachel nodded submissively, maneuvering her cart closer. As she bent to clean the blood, Ethan noticed something peculiar. She avoided getting blood on her skin, not from squeamishness, but with the practiced efficiency of someone who dealt with battlefield wounds. She knew exactly where to apply pressure to stop the spreading, how to work around the coagulating areas without disturbing them. "What did you do before becoming a janitor?" Ethan asked, suddenly curious about this strange cleaning woman. Rachel didn't look up from her work. "I clean things," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah? What kind of things?" Ethan pressed, something about her manner triggering his instincts. "Whatever needed cleaning," Rachel replied, wringing out the blood-soaked cloth with steady hands that betrayed no disgust at the task. Connor Davis's voice cut through the tense atmosphere from his position at the control tower door. "Mason, we've got a problem. The first plane is reporting fuel at critical levels." Mason spun around, his face contorting with rage. "What do you mean critical? They're saying 15 minutes maximum flight time remaining." Mason turned to Blake, his jaw clenched. "Get on the radio to the tower. Tell them to clear that plane for immediate landing." "But you said no planes land until we get paid," Blake started, confusion evident on his scarred face. "I know what I said, you idiot," Mason roared. "But if a plane crashes, we get nothing. Dead hostages are worthless. Let them land, but make sure they know. Anyone tries anything clever, and the other 2 planes become fireballs." Rachel continued her cleaning, but her trained mind was rapidly processing information. As she moved her cart past the flight information board, she immediately recognized the approach patterns displayed on the monitor. The crosswind component was 18 knots, gusting to 25. Visibility was dropping rapidly as storm clouds gathered. Those pilots would need every ounce of skill to land safely in these conditions. She could hear Major Ashley Chen's voice from the tower through the speakers, carefully controlled, but with stress fractures showing. "United 523, turn left, heading 270, descend to 3,000 feet. Maintain 180 knots." Through her concealed Bluetooth earpiece, Rachel heard the full exchange. Ashley was vectoring them for ILS approach to runway 28 right. But with the current crosswind, that wasn't optimal. Runway 10 left would provide better wind alignment, reducing the risk of a go-around that they couldn't afford with their fuel situation. The distant roar of military jet engines caught Rachel's attention. An F-15 Eagle from Travis was maintaining a patrol pattern at 15,000 feet. Standard procedure for a terrorist incident. If the situation deteriorated further, they could scramble additional fighters, but that wouldn't help 3 commercial aircraft running on fumes. Blake Harrison strutted past Rachel's position, deliberately kicking her water bucket with his steel-toed boot. Dirty water cascaded across the floor she'd just cleaned. "Oops," he laughed, the sound cruel and mocking. "Looks like you've got more work to do, cleaning lady. Better hop to it." Rachel silently began mopping up the spilled water, her face expressionless. But as Blake turned away, she studied him with the analytical eye of a trained operative. His stance was all wrong for someone supposedly comfortable with weapons. He held the AK-47 too tightly, his finger resting on the trigger instead of the guard, a rookie mistake that could lead to accidental discharge. His movements were jerky, adrenaline-fueled rather than controlled. Amateur hour, she thought, but dangerous amateurs with automatic weapons were often more unpredictable than professionals. Dylan Carter's shout echoed from Gate 5. "Boss! Someone's trying to call 911 on their cell!" Mason whirled around and fired a burst into the ceiling. Acoustic tiles and dust rained down as passengers screamed and dropped to the floor. "Listen up, all of you," he bellowed. "Anyone tries to call for help, anyone tries to be a hero, and I start shooting hostages, starting with the children." Grace Parker, a grandmother in her 60s, pulled her 5-year-old granddaughter Emily closer, covering the child's ears. The little girl was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks. Rachel pushed her cart nearer to them, moving slowly and non-threateningly. "It's okay, sweetheart," Rachel whispered to Emily, pulling a clean towel from her cart and fashioning it quickly into a crude rabbit shape. "Look, Mr. Bunny wants to say hello." Emily's tears slowed as she watched the towel rabbit. Grace looked at Rachel with grateful eyes. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. As Rachel handed the towel rabbit to Emily, her sleeve pulled back, revealing a portion of an angry burn scar that ran from her wrist up her forearm. Grace recognized it immediately. She'd seen similar scars on her late husband, a Navy pilot who'd survived a carrier deck fire. This wasn't a kitchen accident or industrial injury. This was aviation fuel or napalm. Daniel Lee, an off-duty police officer sitting nearby, also noticed the scar. He began observing Rachel more carefully. The way she constantly maintained situational awareness, how she kept her center of gravity low and balanced even while cleaning, the way her eyes tracked and cataloged every person in the room. This wasn't a janitor. This was someone with extensive tactical training. The radio crackled again. "Tower United 523, 7 miles out on final approach. We have runway 28 right in sight. Wind check, please." Ashley Chen's response was steady. "United 523, wind 200 degrees at 18 knots, gusting to 25, cleared to land runway 28 right. Emergency vehicles are standing by." Everyone in the terminal pressed against the windows, watching the Boeing 737 fighting through the crosswind. The massive aircraft was crabbing hard to maintain its approach path, wings rocking in the turbulence. Rachel watched with expert eyes, reading the pilot's inputs through the aircraft's movements. The captain was overcorrecting slightly, fighting the plane instead of working with it. "Come on," she thought, remembering her own approaches in similar conditions. "Don't fight the wind. Use it. Slip it in if you have to." As if hearing her thoughts, the aircraft's approach smoothed out. The pilot had found the sweet spot, balancing the crosswind with just enough rudder input. The main gear kissed the runway with a puff of smoke, and the nose gear followed smoothly. Thrust reversers deployed with a roar that could be heard even inside the terminal. A collective sigh of relief went through the hostages. 1 down, 2 to go. Mason jumped back on the desk. "Nobody celebrate yet. That was the easy one. 2 more planes, and my patience is running thin. Where's my money?" Ethan was monitoring news feeds on his phone. "Mason, we're on every channel. CNN, Fox, everyone's covering this. They're calling it the Fairfield Airport crisis." "Good," Mason grinned. "Let the whole world watch. Let them see what happens when Mason Brooks doesn't get what he wants." Connor called out again. "Second plane is requesting immediate approach. They're down to 12 minutes of fuel." "Let them land," Mason ordered. "But I want everyone to understand. If I don't see movement on my money soon, the third plane doesn't get clearance. They can circle until they fall out of the sky." Rachel's jaw clenched imperceptibly. American 817 had families on board. She'd seen the manifest on a screen reflection earlier. 138 passengers, including 23 children. She couldn't let that happen. Moving her cart toward the ventilation grates, she pretended to dust while actually examining the maintenance access panel. The ventilation system connected directly to the control tower. If she could introduce something into the air system, smoke, gas, anything, it might force an evacuation that could give tactical teams an opening. "Hey!" Connor's sharp voice made her freeze. "What are you doing over there, janitor?" Rachel jumped, deliberately knocking over her spray bottle. The cleaning solution spread across the floor. "I'm sorry. I was just dusting the vents. They get so dirty." Connor approached, rifle raised. "Step away from there, now!" Rachel scrambled backward, hands raised placatingly. I'm sorry. I'll clean somewhere else." "You better," Connor growled. "In fact, why don't you go clean the bathrooms? Get out of here." Rachel nodded rapidly, pushing her cart toward the restrooms. But she'd seen what she needed. The access panel was secured with standard screws, not security bolts. Given 5 minutes alone, she could get inside the system. As she passed the windows again, she caught sight of the second aircraft on approach. American 817 was having a harder time than the first plane. The wind had picked up, and rain was starting to fall. The 737 was bucking like a wild horse, fighting through wind shear on short final. Ashley Chen's voice was tight with stress. "American 817, wind shear alert, go around if necessary." The pilot's response was calm but strained. "Negative on the go-around tower. We don't have the fuel. We're committed." Rachel held her breath as the plane fought its way down. The pilot was good, very good. He was riding the shear, using powers and control inputs to maintain his glide path despite the invisible rivers of air trying to throw him off course. 50 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet. The main gear slammed onto the runway hard, bouncing once before settling. The nose gear followed with another hard impact. Not pretty, but safe. The plane immediately began heavy braking, thrust reversers howling. Mason clapped mockingly. "Bravo! What a show! Now, where's my money? The third plane has..." He checked his watch. 8 minutes of fuel. Clock's ticking. Colonel Wells finally spoke up from his corner. "You're insane if you think the government will pay you. They don't negotiate with terrorists." Mason walked over to Wells, pressing the rifle barrel against his temple. "Terrorist? I'm a businessman. And right now, I'm selling 113 lives on that last plane. What's the going rate for a human life these days, Colonel?" Wells remained steady. "You won't get away with this. Even if you get the money, where will you go? Every law enforcement agency in the world will be hunting you." "Let me worry about that," Mason smiled coldly. "Blake, send up the good Colonel. He's making me nervous." As Blake zip-tied Wells to a chair, Rachel noticed something. The Colonel's eyes kept flicking to his jacket pocket. There was a slight bulge there, possibly a weapon, or more likely, a communication device. If she could get close enough... Suddenly, Iris Martinez, another janitor who worked the night shift, emerged from a supply closet where she'd been hiding. "Please don't shoot," she cried, hands raised. "I was just getting supplies when you came in." Dylan grabbed her roughly. "Another cleaning lady? How many of you are there?" "Just us two on this shift," Iris stammered, glancing at Rachel. "Please, I have kids." "Shut up and sit down." Dylan shoved her toward the other hostages. But Rachel had noticed something in that brief eye contact. Iris's fear wasn't quite genuine. Her pupils weren't dilated enough for true panic, and her breathing was too controlled. Was she an undercover officer, air marshal, or something else? The situation was getting more complex by the minute. Rachel continued cleaning, her mind racing through possibilities and contingencies. She needed to act soon, but the moment had to be perfect. Too early, and she'd blow her cover without achieving anything. Too late, and people would die. Major Ashley Chen's voice crackled over the speakers again. "Southwest 452, hold your position. Fuel status critical acknowledged. Stand by for approach clearance." The third plane was running on vapor. Rachel could see it through the windows, lower than the others, trying to conserve every drop of fuel. The pilot had probably already shut down the auxiliary power unit and was running on battery power alone. Mason grabbed his radio microphone from Blake. "Tower, this is the man in charge down here. That third plane doesn't land until I see proof that my money is being prepared. You have 5 minutes." "This is Major Chen. I don't have authority to confirm any payments. You need to speak with the FBI negotiator." "I don't need to do anything," Mason shouted. 5 minutes, or that plane becomes a lawn dart." Rachel knew she couldn't wait any longer. As she pushed her cart past the restroom entrance, she deliberately knocked over a stack of paper towel boxes, creating a distraction. While Connor and Dylan looked toward the noise, she quickly palmed a small multi-tool from her cart, officially for tightening loose fixtures, but useful for so much more. In the chaos and stress, nobody noticed her subtle preparation. She was invisible, just the cleaning lady doing her pathetic job. They had no idea that the janitor they'd dismissed and humiliated had once put an F-22 Raptor through a vertical climb at Mach 1.8, pulling 9 Gs without breaking a sweat. Lily Anderson was trying to keep other passengers calm, but her own hands were shaking. She moved closer to where Rachel was cleaning. "How can you stay so calm?" she whispered. Rachel looked up at her with deliberately vacant eyes. "When you clean up messes for a living, you get used to bad situations," she said softly. But Lily caught something in that statement, a double meaning that suggested Rachel had cleaned up much worse messes than spilled water and blood. Sergeant Paul Roberts, the off-duty military police officer, had been watching Rachel for several minutes now. He'd noticed how she never turned her back on any of the gunmen, how she maintained overlapping fields of observation, how her random cleaning pattern actually gave her access to every strategic point in the terminal. He'd seen this before, in Iraq and Afghanistan, operators pretending to be locals, hiding in plain sight until the moment to strike. Ethan Miller was getting agitated, pacing back and forth. "Mason, something doesn't feel right. It's too quiet. Where are the cops? Where's SWAT? They should be trying to negotiate by now." Mason frowned. "You're right. Connor, check the windows. See if you can spot any movement outside." Connor moved to the windows, scanning with binoculars they had found behind the counter. "I see patrol cars at the perimeter, but they're staying back. Wait, there's movement on the terminal roof next door. Looks like snipers. They're setting up shooting positions." "Good," Mason said. "Let them. We've got 30 hostages here. They won't risk it. Blake, grab some of these people. Put them against the windows as human shields." Blake started grabbing passengers, forcing them to stand against the glass. He grabbed Grace Parker, but when little Emily started crying, Rachel couldn't stay passive. "Take me instead," she said quietly, stepping forward. "The child is scared. I'll stand there." Blake laughed. "Look at this. The mouse has found some courage. Fine. You want to be a human shield? Get over there." Rachel moved to the window, positioning herself where she could see reflections of the entire terminal in the glass. From this position, she had perfect situational awareness. Southwest 452's pilot came over the radio, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Tower, Southwest 452 declaring emergency fuel situation. We have approximately 6 minutes of powered flight remaining. Request immediate landing clearance." Mason grabbed the radio again. "You want to land? Show me my money." A new voice came over the speakers, deep, authoritative. "Mr. Brooks, this is Special Agent Marcus Webb, FBI. I'm authorized to confirm that your funds are being prepared, but we need more time." "How much time?" Mason demanded. 20 minutes for the electronic transfer to be arranged." "That plane has 6 minutes. Then I suggest you let them land while we finish the arrangements. You'll have your money, but only if everyone stays alive." Mason considered for a moment. The terminal was silent except for Emily's muffled sobs and the distant sound of jet engines. Rachel watched the third plane through the window. The pilot had deployed the landing gear early, a desperate attempt to create drag and conserve fuel by gliding as much as possible. It was a risky move that showed just how critical their situation was. "Fine," Mason finally announced. "The plane can land, but if my money isn't ready in 20 minutes, I start shooting hostages, one every 5 minutes until I get paid." Ashley Chen immediately cleared Southwest 452 for approach. The relief in the pilot's voice was palpable. "Southwest 452, runway in sight. We're coming in." This approach was the worst yet. The rain had intensified, and the wind was gusting to 30 knots. The 737 was being thrown around like a toy. Rachel could see the control surfaces working frantically as the pilot fought to maintain control. 100 feet. The plane was crabbing at nearly 20 degrees. 50 feet. A massive gust pushed the aircraft off centerline. 20 feet. The pilot kicked in hard rudder, aligning with the runway at the last second. The landing was hard enough to blow 2 tires. The plane skidded slightly before the pilot regained control, using differential braking to keep it on the runway. Emergency vehicles immediately raced toward the aircraft. The terminal erupted in cheers and applause, even from the gunmen. 3 planes down safely, 381 lives saved, for now. But Mason wasn't celebrating. He was looking at his watch. 19 minutes, he announced. Then the real show begins. Rachel knew she had to act before that deadline. As she moved away from the window, she caught Colonel Wells's eye. He was studying her intently now, something in his expression showing recognition. Not of her specifically, but of what she represented. He'd commanded enough special operators to recognize one, even in a janitor's uniform. The colonel made a subtle gesture with his bound hands, indicating his jacket pocket. Rachel understood immediately. Whatever was in that pocket, he wanted her to have it. She pushed her cart closer to Wells, pretending to clean around his chair. As she bent down to wipe the floor near his feet, she smoothly lifted a small device from his pocket, a military emergency transponder. Once activated, it would signal every military asset within 50 miles. Wells whispered almost inaudibly, "Ghost Eagle." Rachel froze for a split second. He knew who she was. Of course he did. Her grounding had been big news in Air Force circles. The first female Thunderbird pilot, grounded after a classified incident in Afghanistan that nobody would talk about publicly. She met his eyes briefly and saw respect there, the contempt from earlier completely gone. He nodded almost imperceptibly. He understood what she was about to do. 15 minutes remained on Mason's deadline. Rachel moved her cart toward the ventilation system again, this time using the crowds of hostages as cover from Connor's view. She had the multi-tool, the transponder, and years of training. It was time to stop being the janitor and remember who she really was. As she pretended to organize cleaning supplies in her cart, she activated the transponder with a soft click that was covered by the noise of rain hitting the terminal windows. In 30 seconds, every military commander within 50 miles would know there was a special operator in play inside the terminal. Ethan Miller was still pacing, his agitation growing. "Something's wrong, Mason. This is too easy. They gave in too quick on the planes." Mason nodded slowly. "You're right. Blake, Connor, check everyone again. Look for phones, weapons, anything suspicious." The gunmen started moving through the hostages, searching more thoroughly. Rachel knew she had seconds before they reached her cart and found the multi-tool and transponder. She made her decision. Grabbing a bottle of industrial ammonia cleaner from her cart, she accidentally dropped it near the ventilation intake. The bottle shattered, and the powerful fumes were immediately sucked into the system. Within seconds, people started coughing. The fumes spread quickly through the terminal's air system. "What the?" Connor started coughing. "What is that smell?" "The cleaning lady dropped something," Dylan said, his eyes watering, but the fumes were also being pulled into the control tower's ventilation. Ashley Chen's voice came over the speakers, coughing. "We need to evacuate the tower! Chemical spill!" Mason realized what was happening. "It's a diversion! Everyone watch the doors!" But the chaos was already starting. Hostages were coughing, eyes streaming. The gunmen were affected too, their visibility reduced. In the confusion, Rachel saw her opportunity. She moved, not like a janitor, but with the fluid precision of a trained warrior. In 3 seconds, she'd crossed the 15 feet to Connor, whose eyes were closed as he rubbed them. Her elbow struck his solar plexus with surgical precision, dropping him silently. His AK-47 clattered to the floor, but Ethan saw the movement through his tears. "The janitor! She's..." His words were cut off as emergency sirens began wailing. The transponder had done its job. The cavalry was coming. Mason spun toward Rachel, raising his rifle. "You! You're not a janitor!" Rachel stood straight for the first time since the crisis began, her posture transforming from submissive to commanding in an instant. The tears from the ammonia fumes streamed down her face, but her eyes were cold and focused. "No," she said, her voice no longer weak but filled with quiet authority. "I'm not." Blake moved to flank her, but the ammonia fumes were thickest near his position. He was essentially blind, firing wildly in her general direction. The bullets shattered windows, sending passengers screaming to the floor. Rachel rolled behind a concrete pillar, Connor's AK-47 now in her hands. She checked the magazine with practiced efficiency. 23 rounds remaining. 4 hostiles still active. The math was simple, but the execution would be complex with 30 civilians in the crossfire. Dylan had grabbed Lily Anderson, using her as a human shield. "Drop the gun, or I kill the stewardess." Rachel's mind calculated angles, distances, probabilities. From her position, she had no clean shot, but she noticed something Dylan hadn't: Iris Martinez was moving up behind him, no longer playing the terrified janitor. Their eyes met across the terminal. Iris gave a subtle nod. She was definitely law enforcement of some kind. "I said drop it!" Dylan screamed, pressing his Glock against Lily's temple. Rachel slowly placed the rifle on the ground and raised her hands. "Okay, let her go." As Dylan relaxed slightly, Iris struck. A telescoping baton appeared in her hand. She was an air marshal after all. The blow to Dylan's knee dropped him screaming. Lily broke free and ran. Mason and Blake were the only ones still combat effective, but they were also partially blinded and disoriented. Mason fired a burst toward Rachel's last position, but she'd already moved, using the chaos and poor visibility to her advantage. "Who are you?" Mason screamed. "Federal agent? Military?" Rachel didn't answer. She was circling, using the terminal's acoustics to confuse them about her position. Every few seconds, she'd knock something over in a different location, making them spin and fire at shadows. The ammonia fumes were dissipating now, but the psychological damage was done. The gunmen were rattled, their amateur status showing. They had expected to intimidate civilians, not face trained opposition. Ethan had recovered from the solar plexus strike and was reaching for his weapon when Sergeant Roberts acted. The old MP might have been retired, but muscle memory never fades. He put Ethan in a chokehold, rendering him unconscious in seconds. Now it was just Mason and Blake, standing back to back in the center of the terminal, weapons raised, spinning slowly. "You're surrounded," Mason shouted. "There's nowhere to run." Rachel's voice came from somewhere in the shadows, calm and professional. "You're right. You are surrounded. SWAT teams are at every entrance. Snipers have you in their crosshairs. It's over." "I've still got hostages." "No, you don't. You. Look around." Mason looked. During the chaos, the hostages had moved away from the gunmen, taking cover behind check-in counters and pillars. Iris and Roberts had armed themselves and were covering the civilians. Even Colonel Wells had managed to cut his zip ties on broken glass and was directing people to safety. It was just Mason and Blake now, alone in the middle of the terminal. Blake was panicking. "Mason, we need to go. We can still make it to the service tunnels." "Shut up," Mason snarled. But he knew Blake was right. The plan had failed. The main entrance doors suddenly exploded inward. SWAT teams poured in, red laser dots appearing on Mason and Blake like angry fireflies. "Drop your weapons, now!" The SWAT commander's voice was amplified through a megaphone. Blake immediately dropped his rifle and raised his hands, but Mason still held his AK-47, his finger on the trigger. "It's over, Mason," Rachel said, stepping out from behind a pillar. She'd removed her janitor's cap, and her military bearing was now unmistakable. "Don't make this worse." Mason stared at her, his face contorting with rage. You were here the whole time, playing janitor. You ruined everything." "I was just doing my job," Rachel said simply, "cleaning up messes." Mason started to raise his rifle, but 12 SWAT officers fired simultaneously with less lethal rounds. He went down hard, convulsing from the electric charge of multiple taser hits. As the SWAT team secured Mason and Blake, one of the officers approached Rachel. "Ma'am, are you injured?" "No, I'm fine," Rachel said, suddenly feeling exhausted as the adrenaline began to fade. Colonel Wells approached, his uniform disheveled, but his bearing still military straight. "Major Thompson," he said formally, using her retired rank. "Outstanding work." Rachel looked at him, surprised by the respect in his voice. "I'm just a janitor, Colonel." Wells shook his head. "No, Major. You're a hero who chose to serve in a different way after what happened. I was wrong to judge you earlier. I apologize." Before Rachel could respond, the terminal erupted in chaos again. But this time it was reporters and camera crews flooding in. The story had gone national while the crisis was unfolding, and everyone wanted to interview the mysterious janitor who'd helped stop the hijacking. "Is it true you're former military?" one reporter shouted. "What's your name?" another called. "How did you know what to do?" Rachel tried to back away but found herself surrounded. She'd operated in shadows for so long, the spotlight was overwhelming. Then Ashley Chen's voice came over the speakers one more time. "Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. I'd like everyone to know that the woman you're surrounding is Major Rachel Thompson, call sign Ghost Eagle. 2 years ago, she was one of only 12 women ever to fly with the Thunderbirds, the Air Force's elite demonstration squadron. She's also a decorated combat pilot with 3 distinguished flying crosses and 2 silver stars." The terminal fell silent. Everyone stared at Rachel. Ashley continued. Major Thompson was grounded 2 years ago after a classified incident in Afghanistan. What most people don't know is that she saved an entire special operations team by flying her F-22 into a valley that was supposedly impossible to navigate. She succeeded, but the political fallout from the unauthorized rescue mission ended her flying career. Rachel's face had gone pale. This was the secret she'd been carrying, the reason she'd hidden herself as a janitor at the very airfield where she'd once been stationed. Wells stepped forward, addressing the crowd. Major Thompson accepted her grounding without complaint, without revealing the classified details that would have cleared her name. She chose duty over glory, service over self. And today, even as a civilian janitor, she still put herself at risk to save lives. This is what real honor looks like. The terminal erupted in applause. Passengers, police, even the SWAT team members were clapping. Emily, the 5-year-old girl, ran forward and hugged Rachel's legs. "Thank you for saving us," Emily said, looking up with wide eyes. Rachel knelt down to Emily's level, her eyes soft for the first time since the crisis began. "You were very brave," she told the little girl, "much braver than I was." Grace Parker approached, tears in her eyes. "You gave up everything to save those soldiers, didn't you? Your career, your reputation, everything." Rachel stood slowly, uncomfortable with the attention. "I did what any pilot would do, leave no one behind." Lily Anderson pushed through the crowd. "But why stay here? Why work as a janitor at the place that must have so many painful memories?" Rachel looked around the terminal, at the gates where she'd departed for countless missions, at the tarmac where her F-22 had once sat, at the control tower where she'd heard her call sign for the last time as a military pilot. "Because," she said quietly, "even a grounded eagle can still serve. It doesn't matter if you're flying at 30,000 feet or mopping floors at ground level. Service is service." A commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. A general in full dress uniform entered, followed by an entourage of military officers. Rachel recognized him immediately, General Marcus Stone, Chief of Staff of the Air Force. The crowd parted as he approached Rachel. When he reached her, he did something that shocked everyone. He saluted, a 4-star general saluting a civilian janitor. Rachel automatically returned the salute, muscle memory taking over. "Major Thompson," the general said, his voice carrying through the terminal, "I've just come from an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs. In light of today's events and new declassified information about your actions in Afghanistan, we're prepared to offer you full reinstatement with back pay and restoration of your flight status." The terminal held its breath. Rachel stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice clear and firm. "Thank you, General, but with respect, I've found my place. The floors here need cleaning, the people need protecting, and I can do both. I don't need wings to serve." The general studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I understand, Major, but the offer stands. Your country owes you a debt." "No, sir," Rachel replied. "I owe the country, and I'm still paying it back, just in a different way." As the general and his entourage left, the crowds began to disperse. The crisis was over, the hostages were safe, and the story would dominate news cycles for weeks. But Rachel quietly retrieved her mop and bucket, ready to clean up the mess left behind. Connor was being loaded onto a stretcher, conscious but groggy. As he was wheeled past Rachel, he looked up at her with a mixture of awe and confusion. "You could have killed me. Why didn't you?" Rachel paused in her cleaning. "Because you're not my enemy. You were just a confused kid who made bad choices. Now you'll have time to make better ones." As the terminal slowly returned to normal operations, Iris Martinez approached Rachel. "Federal Air Marshal Iris Martinez," she said, showing her badge. "I have to say, that was incredible work. You sure you don't want to join us? We could use someone with your skills." Rachel smiled slightly. "Thanks, but I've got a job. These floors don't clean themselves." Iris laughed. "Well, if you ever change your mind..." She handed Rachel a business card. As the evening wore on and flights began to resume, Rachel continued her janitorial duties, but something had changed. The passengers and airport staff who had previously ignored her now stopped to thank her, to shake her hand, to take selfies with the hero janitor, as social media was already calling her. Daniel Lee, the off-duty cop, approached as Rachel was emptying trash bins. "I knew there was something different about you, the way you moved, the way you observed everything. You mind if I ask, how do you go from flying the Air Force's most advanced fighter to this?" Rachel tied off the trash bag with practiced efficiency. You know what the hardest part of flying combat missions was? She asked. Daniel shook his head. It wasn't the enemy fire, or the G-forces, or the split-second decisions. It was coming back and trying to explain to civilians what it was like. They'd thank you for your service, but they couldn't really understand what that service meant. The isolation, the weight of decisions that cost lives, the brotherhood you'd die for without hesitation. She picked up a new trash liner. But here, as a janitor, I'm invisible. I can serve without the spotlight, without the questions, without having to explain why I still wake up sometimes thinking I'm inverted over Hindu Kush mountains. It's peaceful. Daniel nodded slowly. I get it. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones nobody sees. As midnight approached and Rachel's shift was officially ending, Colonel Wells appeared one more time. He'd changed into his dress uniform and looked every inch the commander. Major Thompson, he said formally, I've been authorized to inform you that the Secretary of Defense will be awarding you the Presidential Medal of Freedom for your actions today. Rachel stopped mopping. Sir, I'd prefer if they didn't. Wells looked surprised. May I ask why? Because medals are for people who want recognition. I just want to clean floors and go home to my apartment and feed my cat. Today was an anomaly. Tomorrow, I'll be back here with my mop, and that's how I want it. Wells studied her for a long moment. You know, in all my years of service, I've met many heroes, but I've never met anyone who understood duty quite like you do. Rachel resumed mopping. We all serve in our own way, Colonel. You command from the tower. Pilots fly from the cockpit. I clean from the ground. None is more important than the other. As Wells left, the airport began shutting down for the night. Rachel finished her shift, changed out of her uniform in the employee break room, and prepared to go home. But as she walked toward the employee exit, she found the entire night shift waiting for her. Janitors, security guards, maintenance workers. They began applauding. We always knew you were special, one of them said. The way you'd stand at the windows watching planes take off during breaks. The way you'd flinch at certain engine sounds. We figured you were ex-military, but this was something else. Rachel felt tears threatening for the first time all day. These people, her colleagues in the invisible army of service workers, understood what the generals and reporters couldn't. They knew what it was like to serve without recognition, to take pride in work that others considered beneath them. As she finally made it to her old Honda Civic in the employee parking lot, Rachel sat for a moment, processing the day's events. She pulled out the faded photograph from her pocket, the one that had fallen from her bag earlier. It showed her standing next to an F-22 Raptor, wearing her flight suit, surrounded by her squadron. The photo was taken just 3 days before the Afghanistan mission that changed everything. She traced the faces of her fellow pilots, some of whom had publicly criticized her actions, unable to understand why she'd risked everything for a special operations team that wasn't even supposed to be in that valley. They couldn't know that the team had been searching for a kidnapped aid worker, that the mission was completely black, that success or failure would never make the official records. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number. Ghost Eagle, the boys from ODA 595 want you to know we never forgot. You gave up your wings so we could come home. We've been looking for you for 2 years. If you ever need anything at all, you call. Master Sergeant Jake Sullivan. Rachel smiled, a real smile this time. ODA 595, Operational Detachment Alpha 595, the Special Forces team she'd saved. They'd survived, completed their mission, rescued the aid worker. That made everything worth it. Another message followed. P.S. We saw the news today. Still saving lives, even with a mop. Once a warrior, always a warrior. As she drove home through the quiet streets, Rachel thought about the day's events. She'd been exposed, her carefully maintained anonymity shattered. Tomorrow, there would be interview requests, book deals, movie offers. Everyone would want to hear the story of the janitor who was secretly a hero, but they wouldn't understand the real story, that she'd never stopped being a hero. Every day she came to work, every floor she cleaned, every trash bag she emptied was an act of service. The humility it took to go from flying the world's most advanced fighter aircraft to pushing a mop bucket was its own form of courage. Her apartment was small and sparse, military neat despite her civilian status. Her cat, a one-eyed rescue named Maverick, greeted her at the door. The walls were bare except for one item, her Thunderbird's patch, framed but turned face down. She fed Maverick, took a shower to wash away the smell of ammonia and fear, and sat on her couch in the dark. Through her window, she could see planes approaching Fairfield Airport, their landing lights like stars descending to Earth. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother's number. "Rachel, honey, I just saw the news. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom. They said you were a hero, that you saved all those people. I just did what needed doing." There was a pause. "Your father would have been so proud. He always said you were special, even before you became a pilot." Rachel's father had been a crew chief in Vietnam, had spent his life maintaining aircraft but never flying them. He'd lived to see her earn her wings, but died before the Afghanistan incident. "He would have been proud of you either way," her mother continued. "Pilot or janitor, hero or not, he just wanted you to be happy. Are you happy, Rachel?" Rachel considered the question. Was she happy? She'd lost her career, her identity, her purpose, or so she'd thought. But today had shown her that she'd never lost any of those things. She'd simply transformed them. "Yes, Mom, I think I am." After ending the call, Rachel sat in silence for a while. Then she pulled out the Air Marshal's business card Iris had given her. She also looked at the text from the Special Forces team. Finally, she found the notification on her phone about the General's reinstatement offer. 3 paths forward, 3 ways to reclaim her official status as a warrior. But as she looked at her janitor's uniform hanging on the back of her door, she realized she didn't need official status. She'd proven today that service came in many forms. Her phone buzzed with one more message. This one was from Ashley Chen, the air traffic controller. "Rachel, thank you for keeping your head when we all lost ours. P.S. Runway 10 left would have been the better choice for those approaches. Glad to know someone else was thinking it too." Rachel smiled. Even grounded, she was still a pilot at heart. Still reading the winds, still calculating approaches, still protecting people, just from a different angle. The next morning arrived too quickly. Rachel's alarm went off at 5 a.m. as usual, but when she reached for her phone to silence it, she found 47 missed calls and over 200 text messages. Word had spread overnight. Every major news outlet wanted an exclusive interview with the Ghost Eagle janitor. She deleted them all without reading and got dressed in her freshly laundered janitor's uniform. Maverick watched her, with his one good eye, seeming to judge her decision. "Don't look at me like that," she told the cat. "Someone has to clean up yesterday's mess. Bullet holes don't patch themselves." The drive to Fairfield Airport usually took 15 minutes. Today it took 45. News vans clogged the employee entrance. Reporters thrust microphones at every car. Rachel had to show her ID 3 times to security guards she'd known for 2 years, who now looked at her like she was a stranger. "Major Thompson," one of them said, and she could hear the newfound respect in his voice. "Maybe you should use the VIP entrance today." "It's just Rachel," she corrected, "and I'm not a VIP. I'm maintenance staff." But when she finally made it to the employee break room, she found it transformed. A banner reading, "Thank you, Rachel," hung across one wall. The table was covered with flowers, cards, and homemade food from her colleagues. Jorge, the night custodian who barely spoke English, had left a note in broken writing. "You hero, you familia, we proud." Rachel felt her throat tighten. These people, who society overlooked and undervalued, understood something fundamental about service that all the generals and politicians never would. Martha, the breakroom coordinator, bustled in with a fresh pot of coffee. "Oh, good. You're here. Everyone's been asking about you. The morning shift wanted to wait for you before starting work." "That's not necessary," Rachel protested. "We have jobs to do." "Honey," Martha said, putting a weathered hand on Rachel's shoulder, "sometimes the job can wait. Sometimes we need to acknowledge that one of our own did something extraordinary." The morning shift custodial staff filed in, 7 people who kept the airport running while travelers rushed past without a glance. They stood awkwardly, unsure how to treat their colleague who'd been revealed as something more. Tom, the senior janitor who had trained Rachel 2 years ago, cleared his throat. "We just wanted to say, we knew you were running from something when you showed up here. Lots of us are. But you never acted like you were better than us, even though we now know you were. Are. You know what I mean." "I'm not better than anyone," Rachel said firmly. "We all serve. You've been keeping this place running for 15 years, Tom. That's its own kind of heroism." "Maybe," Tom said, "but we don't save 381 lives in 20 minutes. "You save lives every day," Rachel countered. "Every time you properly sanitize a bathroom, you prevent disease. Every time you clear ice from a walkway, you prevent accidents. Every time you maintain clean conditions, you contribute to the safe operation of this airport. We're all links in the same chain. Before anyone could respond, the break room door opened, and Airport Director James Harrison entered, followed by two assistants carrying tablets and phones. "Ah, Rachel, excellent. You're here." He beamed at her with the artificial smile of a politician. "We need to discuss your new position." "I don't have a new position," Rachel said, reaching for her mop bucket. "I have floors to clean." "Nonsense. After yesterday's events, we can't have a national hero cleaning toilets. I'm prepared to offer you a position as head of security operations, with a salary of—" "No, thank you," Rachel cut him off. Harrison blinked. What? You don't understand. This is a six-figure position. Office, assistant, company car. I understand perfectly. The answer is no. But you're the Ghost Eagle. You're a decorated veteran. You can't seriously want to continue as a janitor." Rachel looked him straight in the eye. 2 years ago, when I applied for this job, you barely looked at my application. You hired me at minimum wage, no questions asked, because you needed someone to clean up messes. Nothing has changed. I'm still the same person who's been mopping your floors for 2 years. If you didn't value that work then, don't pretend to value it now. Harrison's face reddened. This is a public relations nightmare. How do we explain that our hero is still pushing a mop? You don't, Rachel said simply. You let me do my job. As Harrison stormed out, Tom chuckled. You just turned down more money than all of us make combined. Money was never the point, Rachel replied. Now, I believe we have a terminal to clean. Yesterday's incident left quite a mess. The terminal was indeed a disaster. Bullet holes peppered the walls, broken glass glittered across the floor, and the lingering smell of ammonia mixed with fear sweat created an oppressive atmosphere. Yellow crime scene tape blocked off sections, but the airport needed to be operational. Rachel started with the bloodstains where Captain Bradley had fallen. As she worked, she noticed someone watching. A young girl, maybe 17, with a notebook and press credentials that looked very new. You're not supposed to be in here, Rachel said without looking up. I'm Emma Watson from the school paper, the girl said nervously. I'm not with the real media, I wanted to ask you something. Rachel continued cleaning. Ask? Why didn't you fight back sooner? You had the skills. You could have taken them down the moment they arrived. People might not have been traumatized for so long. Rachel paused, considering how to explain tactical patience to a teenager. Have you ever played chess? A little. Then you know that the best move isn't always the first move you see. Yesterday, 5 armed men held 30 hostages. If I'd acted immediately, people would have died. By waiting, by letting them think they were in control, I gathered intelligence, positioned myself, and created the right conditions for success. But people were terrified. Fear passes, death doesn't. Rachel resumed scrubbing. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't acting. It's waiting for the right moment to act. Emma scribbled notes. My dad says you're either the humblest hero he's ever heard of, or you're crazy for staying a janitor. Maybe both, Rachel said with a slight smile. Tell your dad that real heroes don't need titles. As Emma left, more people approached throughout the morning. Passengers taking selfies with her in the background, pilots saluting as they passed, flight attendants bringing her coffee and snacks. Each interruption made her work harder, longer, but she never complained. Around noon, while she was replacing ceiling tiles damaged by gunfire, she heard familiar boot steps. Military, measured, purposeful. She didn't need to look to know it was Colonel Wells. Major Thompson, Colonel. She continued working, standing on a ladder, carefully fitting new tiles. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about service taking many forms. And? I was wrong. Not just yesterday, but for the past 2 years. I knew about your grounding, heard the rumors. I assumed you were bitter, hiding here. But you weren't hiding, were you? You were still serving, just without the recognition. Rachel fitted another tile. Recognition was never the point, Colonel. I know that now. Which is why I need to tell you something. The Afghanistan incident, the real story is being declassified. Not the sanitized version that got you grounded, but the truth. Rachel's hands stilled. That's not necessary. It is. People should know that you flew into a box canyon with 0 visibility at night during a sandstorm to extract a team that was about to be overrun. That you held position under heavy fire for 7 minutes while they boarded. That you took 37 hits to your aircraft and still flew them home. They already know what matters, that everyone came home. Wells pulled out a folder. This is the report I'm submitting to the Pentagon. It recommends you for the Medal of Honor. Rachel climbed down from the ladder and faced him. Colonel, with all due respect, please don't. Why? Wells seemed genuinely confused. You earned it. You deserve it. Do you know what happened to the last 3 Medal of Honor recipients? Rachel asked. They became symbols, political tools, recruiting posters. They stopped being people and became ideas. I don't want to be an idea. I want to be the person who keeps this airport clean and safe. Wells studied her for a long moment. You know, in 30 years of service, I've never met anyone like you. There are thousands like me, Colonel. They're teaching in schools, driving buses, stocking shelves, veterans who continue to serve without anyone knowing. We don't need medals. We need purpose. This, she gestured to her mop bucket, is my purpose now. Before Wells could respond, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. A group of men in suits had entered, moving with the coordinated precision of a protection detail. At their center walked someone Rachel recognized immediately, Secretary of Defense Michael Crawford. The terminal fell silent as Crawford approached, his detail spreading out to secure the area. Rachel set down her cleaning supplies and stood at attention, muscle memory overriding her civilian status. At ease, Major Thompson, Crawford said, his voice carrying the authority of decades of command. Or should I say, Miss Thompson, since you seem to prefer your civilian status. Either is fine, Mr. Secretary. Crawford looked around the damaged terminal, taking in the bullet holes, the bloodstains Rachel was still cleaning, the shattered windows being replaced by maintenance crews. I've been fully briefed on yesterday's events, he said, also on your actions in Afghanistan 2 years ago. The real actions, not the political version that ended your career. Sir, that's classified. Was classified. As of 0900 hours this morning, it's not. The American people deserve to know what real heroism looks like. Rachel's jaw tightened. Sir, respectfully, I don't want... Crawford raised a hand, cutting her off. I know what you don't want. General Stone briefed me on your refusal of reinstatement. Colonel Wells just informed me you're refusing the Medal of Honor recommendation. You've turned down 6-figure job offers, media deals, and I'm told someone offered you $1 million for a book deal this morning. $2 million, actually, Rachel corrected. The offer went up after I said no the first time. Crawford actually smiled. You're either the most principled person I've ever met or the most stubborn. Possibly both, sir. Indeed. However, I'm not here to offer you anything. I'm here to inform you of something. The 5 individuals you helped apprehend yesterday weren't ordinary criminals. Rachel's eyes sharpened. This was new information. Crawford continued. Mason Brooks has connections to international arms dealers. This wasn't just about ransom money. It was about testing airport security responses for a larger operation. The FBI found plans on his encrypted phone, plans for a coordinated attack on 12 major airports. 12 airports? Your actions didn't just save 3 planes yesterday. You potentially prevented a catastrophe that would have killed thousands. The intelligence community wants to debrief you. Normally, I'd make that an order, but since you're a civilian, I'll cooperate fully, Rachel said immediately. When and where? Agent Martinez will coordinate. She's FBI, by the way, not just an air marshal. As if on cue, Iris Martinez appeared, now in a sharp FBI suit rather than her janitor's disguise. Rachel, we need to talk. Crawford excused himself, but not before adding, Miss Thompson, you may not want recognition, but know that your country recognizes you anyway. He saluted, and Rachel automatically returned it. After Crawford's entourage left, Iris led Rachel to a quiet corner of the terminal. How much do you know about Mason Brooks's organization? Nothing beyond what happened yesterday. He's part of something bigger, international, well-funded, and they're very interested in aviation infrastructure. Iris pulled out a tablet, showing surveillance photos. Recognize any of these people? Rachel studied the images. Most were strangers, but one made her freeze. That's Viktor Kozlov. You know him? Not personally, but he was on our target list in Afghanistan. Russian arms dealer, former Spetsnaz. If he's involved, he is. And here's where it gets interesting. The op you flew in Afghanistan, the one that got you grounded, the team you extracted had just captured intelligence about Kozlov's network. Intelligence that disappeared from classified servers 3 days later. Rachel's mind raced. You're saying my grounding wasn't about the unauthorized rescue? I'm saying things aren't always what they seem. Someone wanted you out of the Air Force, someone with very high clearance. We think the same someone who made that intelligence disappear. Why are you telling me this? Because Mason Brooks had a phone number in his contacts, a number that traces to a burned CIA asset who was supposedly killed in Afghanistan 2 years ago. 3 days after your mission, Rachel felt the pieces clicking together. You think someone in our government is working with Kozlov? I think yesterday wasn't random. I think they knew who you were, knew you worked here. This was a test, Rachel, and you passed. Test for what? Before Iris could answer, Rachel's phone buzzed. Unknown number, but somehow it had bypassed her blocked caller settings. Answer it, Iris said. We're tracing. Rachel answered. Hello? A digitally altered voice spoke. Hello, Ghost Eagle. Impressive display yesterday. Very impressive. Who is this? Someone who knows the truth about Afghanistan, about why you were really grounded, about Operation Blackstone. Rachel's blood went cold. Operation Blackstone was beyond classified, a black operation that officially never existed. You're wondering how I know, the voice continued. Simple. I authorized it, just like I authorized yesterday's test. Test? We needed to know if you still had the skills, the instincts. You do. Which means you are perfect for what comes next. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. No, not even if I tell you that 3 members of ODA 595 are currently being held in a black site in Kazakhstan. The men you saved 2 years ago are now prisoners, and their own government doesn't even know they're missing. Rachel gripped the phone tighter. You're lying. Check your messages. I just sent proof. A video file appeared on her phone. Shaky footage showed 3 men in cells, faces bloodied but recognizable. One was Jake Sullivan, who'd texted her last night. What do you want? Simple. Kozlov is planning something big. Bigger than 12 airports. We need someone to stop him. Someone with no official connection to any agency. Someone who's already dead on paper. I'm not dead on paper. Major Rachel Thompson, call sign Ghost Eagle, died in a training accident 14 months ago. At least, that's what certain classified records show. The woman cleaning floors at Fairfield Airport is nobody. A ghost. Perfect for what we need. I'm not an assassin. No, you're a patriot, and patriots do what's necessary. You have 48 hours to decide. Keep the phone. We'll be in touch. The line went dead. Iris immediately checked her tracing equipment. Nothing. The signal bounced through 17 proxies across 9 countries. Whoever that was, they're professional. This is insane, Rachel said. I'm a janitor. I clean floors. No, Iris said firmly. You're a highly trained operator who's been in deep cover for 2 years, whether you meant to be or not. And now something big is coming, and somehow you're at the center of it. Rachel looked at the phone in her hand, then at her mop bucket sitting forgotten in the corner. Yesterday she'd just wanted to clean floors in peace. Now she was being pulled back into a world she'd tried to leave behind. I need to think, she said. Take your time. But, Rachel, those men in the video, NSA analysis says it's real. Someone really is holding American operators prisoner. Rachel closed her eyes. She could walk away, continue her simple life as a janitor, or she could step back into the shadows, become the ghost they wanted her to be. Iris, can you get me everything you have on Kozlov? And I mean everything. Already preparing the file. Does this mean you're in? It means I'm considering, but first I have floors to finish cleaning. For the rest of the afternoon, Rachel mopped and scrubbed and repaired, but her mind was elsewhere. Every time she passed a window, she looked at the planes taking off and landing, remembering what it felt like to be in the sky, to have that freedom and power. At 3 p.m., her shift officially ended. But as she was changing in the break room, her phone rang. It was the burner phone the mysterious voice had mentioned. You're early, she answered. Check the news, the altered voice said. Channel 7. Rachel found the break room TV remote and switched to Channel 7. Breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom. 3 American military contractors missing in Kazakhstan. The official story was already being spun. Contractors, not soldiers. Missing, not captured. Kazakhstan was cooperating with search efforts. Everything was under control. Lies, the voice said. They have been prisoners for 6 days. In 18 hours, Kozlov will auction them to the highest bidder. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whoever pays most. Unless Unless I do what you want. Unless you do what's right, what you've always done, save American lives. How do I know you're not the one who captured them? Because if I wanted American soldiers dead, they'd already be dead. I need them alive, just like I need Kozlov stopped. Sometimes, Major Thompson, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And sometimes they're just another enemy. True, but right now, I'm the only chance those men have, and you're the only person I trust to save them. Why me? Because you gave up everything to save them once before. Because you have skills that are being wasted on linoleum, and because you're already dead in certain systems, which means you can operate without creating diplomatic incidents. Rachel looked at her reflection in the break room mirror. She saw a janitor in a worn uniform, but underneath, she also saw the pilot, the warrior, the protector she'd always been. What's the mission? Kozlov will be at a private airfield in Nevada in 36 hours, personally overseeing a weapons shipment. The same airfield where your former teammates are being held. One location, two objectives: rescue the operators and eliminate Kozlov. I don't assassinate people. No, but you do protect Americans. And Kozlov has killed 47 American service members over the past decade. This isn't assassination. It's justice. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then, what resources do I have? Whatever you need, weapons, intelligence, transfer screen. There's a storage unit at Fairfield Self-Storage, Unit 377. Everything you need is there. The key is under your car's wheel well. How long has it been there? 2 years. We've been watching you, Major, waiting for the right moment. And if I say no, then 3 American heroes die in 18 hours, Kozlov's weapons flow to terrorist organizations, and those 12 airports still get hit within the year. But you'll have clean floors, so there's that. The sarcasm bit deep. Rachel had convinced herself that her janitor work was noble service, and it was. But was it enough when she had skills that could save lives on a larger scale? I need proof this is legitimate, that you're actually trying to stop Kozlov, not help him. Storage Unit 377. Look at the intelligence package, then decide. The line went dead again. Rachel stood in the break room for several minutes, weighing options. Then she grabbed her car keys and headed to the parking lot. As promised, a small magnetic box was tucked under her wheel well. Inside was a single key. Fairfield Self-Storage was a 10-minute drive. Unit 377 was in the back corner, away from cameras and other units. When Rachel opened it, she stepped back in shock. The unit was a fully equipped tactical operations center. Weapons lined one wall, everything from pistols to sniper rifles, communications equipment, satellite phones, encrypted laptops, and on a table in the center, a thick folder marked Operation Phoenix. She opened it and began reading. Satellite photos of the Nevada airfield. Detailed intelligence on Kozlov's operations. Photos of the 3 captured operators, including recent proof-of-life videos. And something else. Documents showing a mole in the CIA, someone codenamed Blackbird, who had been feeding information to Kozlov for years. The same person who had likely orchestrated her grounding. Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number. Blackbird arrives in Nevada tomorrow night. 3 birds, 1 stone. Interested now? She looked around the storage unit, at tools of a trade she'd left behind, her reflection caught in the polished surface of a rifle scope, and for a moment she saw Ghost Eagle looking back. God help me, she whispered, then texted back a single word. Yes. Within seconds, another text arrived. Transport leaves Fairfield Private Terminal at 0200 hours. Hangar 7. Come alone. Come armed. Rachel selected a Glock 19, 2 spare magazines, and a tactical knife. Basic equipment, nothing fancy. She'd learned long ago that simplicity was reliability. As she drove home, her phone rang. This time it was a number she recognized. Tom from work. Rachel, you okay? You left without saying goodbye. I'm fine, Tom. Something came up. You coming in tomorrow? Rachel looked at the weapons on her passenger seat, covered by her janitor uniform. I might need a few days off. After what you did yesterday, take all the time you need. Job will be here when you get back. Thanks, Tom. And Tom, if I don't come back, don't talk like that. Just tell everyone they're the best people I've ever worked with. That serving alongside them has been an honor. There was a pause. Rachel, you're scaring me. What's going on? Nothing I can talk about. Just take care of everyone, okay? She hung up before he could respond. At home, Maverick seemed to sense something was wrong. The one-eyed cat followed her from room to room as she prepared. She cleaned and loaded the Glock, sharpened the knife, and laid out black tactical clothing she hadn't worn in 2 years. At midnight, she sat down and wrote 3 letters. One to her mother, one to Tom and her co-workers, and one to Colonel Wells. If she didn't come back, Iris would know to deliver them. At 1:15 a.m., she dressed in black tactical pants and shirt, covered by a civilian jacket. The Glock went into a concealed holster, the knife in her boot. She looked like any traveler heading to the airport for an early flight. The drive to Fairfield's private terminal was surreal. 24 hours ago, she'd been mopping these floors. Now she was potentially walking into a trap that could end with her death. Hangar 7 was dark except for a single light over a side door. Rachel approached carefully, every sense alert. The door was unlocked. Inside, a sleek Gulfstream G650 waited, engines already warming up. A figure stepped from the shadows, not threatening, but familiar. "Iris?" Rachel was shocked to see the FBI agent. "I'm your pilot," Iris said. "Turns out we're both more than we seem." "You're part of this?" "I'm part of stopping Kozlov. That's all that matters right now." Iris gestured to the plane. "We need to go. Flight time to Nevada is 3 hours. You'll be briefed en route." Rachel climbed aboard to find the cabin converted into a mobile command center. Screens showed satellite feeds, intelligence reports, real-time tracking data, and in one seat, working on a laptop, sat someone she never expected to see. Master Sergeant Jake Sullivan looked up, his face bearing fresh bruises, but his eyes sharp. "Hey, Ghost Eagle, thanks for coming. Jake, but the video, you were captured?" "Deep fake," Jake admitted. "Good one, though. We needed you to believe it." "This was all a setup?" "Not a setup," a new voice said from the cockpit. General Marcus Stone emerged, no longer in uniform, but in tactical gear. "A recruitment," Rachel's hand moved to her weapon. "General? Retired as of yesterday. Officially, I'm now a private military contractor. Unofficially, I run a black ops unit that doesn't exist. We handle problems the government can't officially touch. Like Kozlov. And like the mole who destroyed your career. Blackbird is real, Major, and they'll be in Nevada tomorrow." "Why all the deception? Why not just ask me?" "Because we needed to know if you still had the edge. Yesterday's airport incident was real. Mason Brooks and his crew were definitely bad guys, but we knew about it in advance. We let it happen to see how you'd respond. You let terrorists take over an airport? We prevented terrorists from taking over 12 airports by letting them try with one, knowing you were there. It was a calculated risk." Rachel felt anger rising. People could have died, but they didn't because you're as good as we hoped. Maybe better. Stone pulled up a screen showing tactical footage from yesterday. 14 seconds from first move to neutralizing Connor. Textbook takedown. Your skills haven't degraded at all. "I'm not joining your Black Ops unit. You already have," Stone said. "The moment you decided those 3 operators needed saving, even though they're actually safe. Because here's the thing. Kozlov does have 3 Americans. Not military, but aid workers. Doctors who were grabbed from a refugee camp last week. Stone showed photos of 3 young medical volunteers, all recent college graduates. "They're real hostages?" Rachel asked. "Very real. And Kozlov will kill them tomorrow unless we stop him. So, the question is, are you going to help us save them? Or are you going to go back to mopping floors while innocent Americans die?" Rachel looked at the photos. 3 young faces, idealistic kids who'd gone to help people and ended up as pawns in an international arms dealer's game. "What's the real plan?" Stone smiled. "Now you're asking the right questions. Iris, get us airborne. We'll brief en route." As the Gulfstream lifted off from Fairfield, Rachel looked down at the airport lights below. Somewhere down there, her mop bucket sat in a supply closet, waiting for her return. She wondered if she'd ever push it again. "Second thoughts?" Jake asked, sitting beside her. "Always. It's what keeps me alive. For what it's worth, we really did try to find you after Afghanistan. You disappeared completely. How does a decorated pilot just vanish?" "She becomes a janitor," Rachel said simply. "People see what they expect to see. No one expects Ghost Eagle to be mopping their floors. But you never really left the fight, did you? You just changed battlefields." Rachel thought about that. Maybe, or maybe the fight never left me. Stone spread tactical maps on the table between them. "The Nevada facility is a converted military base, officially decommissioned but privately owned through shell companies. Kozlov has 40 to 50 security personnel, military-grade weapons, and air defenses. Air assault is out? Correct. We go in quiet, on foot. 2 teams. Jake leads Alpha Team to extract the hostages. You and I are Bravo Team. We go after Kozlov and Blackbird. You know who Blackbird is? We narrowed it to 3 possibilities, all of whom will be at tomorrow's meeting. Deputy Director Patricia Hayes, Section Chief Robert Chen, or Senior Analyst David Moore. All had access to your Afghanistan files. All could have orchestrated your grounding. Rachel studied their photos. She'd never met any of them, but one had destroyed her career. Rules of engagement? She asked. Weapons free on all hostile targets. Kozlov is kill or capture, preference on kill. Blackbird, we want alive for interrogation, but dead is acceptable if necessary. And after? After, you have choices. Join us permanently, return to your janitor job, or take the reinstatement offer that's still on the table. Assuming I survive. There is that, Stone acknowledged. But you've beaten worse odds. The rest of the flight was spent reviewing intelligence, studying facility layouts, memorizing guard patterns. It was like riding a bicycle. The tactical planning came back instantly, as if she'd never left the military. They landed at a private strip 50 miles from the target. 2 black SUVs waited, along with 8 operators Rachel didn't recognize. My team, Jake explained. All former special ops, all officially dead or retired. Ghosts, like you. One of them, a woman with short red hair, approached. Captain Sarah Chen, former Delta. It's an honor, Major Thompson. We've all heard the stories. Stories get exaggerated, Rachel said. Not yours. We've seen the flight recorder data from Afghanistan. What you did was impossible. Impossible is just another word for necessary. They drove through the Nevada desert as dawn approached, finally stopping at a ridge overlooking the target facility. Through binoculars, Rachel could see the converted base, hangars, barracks, a control tower, and on the tarmac, Kozlov's personal aircraft, a modified Antonov An-12. He's here, Stone confirmed. Thermal imaging shows approximately 45 personnel clustered in 3 buildings. The hostages appear to be in the old detention facility, northwest corner. Guards? 6 on the hostages rotating every 4 hours. Next shift change is at 0800. Rachel checked her watch. 6:45 a.m. We go at shift change. Maximum confusion. Agreed. Jake, your team hits the detention facility. Rachel and I infiltrate the main hangar where the meeting is happening. Iris provides overwatch and electronic warfare support. Comms? Rachel asked. Iris handed out encrypted earpieces. Quantum encrypted, frequency hopping every 3 seconds. Even NSA couldn't crack these. They spent the next hour preparing, checking weapons, reviewing contingencies. Rachel found herself falling back into the rhythm of pre-mission preparation, the calm before the storm that every operator knew. At 7:45, they moved out. Rachel and Stone approached from the east, using a dried riverbed for concealment. Jake's team moved toward the detention facility from the north. Iris set up on a ridge with a sniper rifle and electronic warfare equipment. All teams, radio check, Stone whispered. Alpha ready, Jake responded. Overwatch ready, Iris confirmed. Bravo ready, Rachel said, feeling the weight of the Glock at her side. They reached the perimeter fence at 7:58. Stone cut through the chain link while Rachel watched for patrols. The base was quiet, most personnel inside the buildings. Movement, Iris reported. 3 vehicles approaching from the south. Looks like, yes, it's our CIA guests. Blackbird is arriving. Through the fence gap, Rachel and Stone moved toward the main hangar. The massive doors were partially open, voices echoing from inside. Rachel counted at least 20 people, maybe more. Alpha team in position, Jake reported. Ready to breach on your signal. Wait 1, Stone said. Let's see who Blackbird is. They crept closer to the hangar, finding cover behind a fuel truck. Through the open doors, Rachel could see Kozlov, tall, scarred, commanding. He was talking to 3 Americans in suits. Patricia Hayes, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair. Robert Chen, younger, nervous-looking. David Moore, calm and professional. One of them was a traitor. Welcome, my friends, Kozlov said in accented English. I trust your flight was comfortable. Cut the pleasantries, Hayes said. Do you have the weapons we discussed? Of course, but first, a demonstration. Kozlov gestured, and his men brought in 3 figures with bags over their heads. The aid workers. "No," Rachel whispered. "Steady," Stone warned. Kozlov pulled the bag off one hostage, a young woman, maybe 25, terrified but trying to be brave. "Dr. Emily Foster," Kozlov announced. "Stanford Medical School graduate, here to save the world. How noble." "Please," Emily said. "We're just doctors. We're neutral. We help everyone." "Neutral is a luxury I don't believe in," Kozlov replied. He pulled out a pistol. "Now, which of my CIA friends wants to demonstrate their commitment to our partnership?" There was a moment of silence. Then David Moore stepped forward. "Give me the gun," Blackbird revealed. "Son of a bitch," Stone muttered. "Moore was the analyst who recommended your grounding, Rachel." Moore took the pistol, checked the chamber with professional efficiency. He pointed it at Emily Foster's head. "Wait," Patricia Hayes said. "This wasn't part of the deal." "No?" Moore turned the gun on Hayes. "You always were too soft, Patricia." He fired. Hayes crumpled to the ground. "Anyone else have objections?" Moore asked Chen, who shook his head rapidly, face pale. "Good." Moore turned back to Emily. "Now, where were we?" Rachel had seen enough. "Alpha, breach now. We're going loud." She didn't wait for Stone's approval. She drew her Glock and moved toward the hangar, using parked vehicles for cover. Behind her, she heard explosions as Jake's team hit the detention facility. "Contact! Contact!" Jake's voice crackled. "Heavy resistance!" Gunfire erupted across the base. Kozlov's men scrambled for weapons, confused by the multiple attack vectors. Rachel reached the hangar door as Moore was turning back toward Emily. She had a clear shot and took it. The gun flew from Moore's hand as her bullet struck it, sending him spinning to the ground, clutching his injured hand. "Ghost Eagle," Kozlov said calmly, seemingly unsurprised. "I wondered when you'd appear. Let the hostages go." "I don't think so." Kozlov drew his own weapon, not at the hostages, but at the fuel tanks lining the hangar wall. "One shot and we all burn. Is that what you want?" "Bravo, be advised," Iris's voice came through. 15 hostiles converging on your position." Stone appeared beside Rachel, rifle raised. "We're about to have company." "I have a better idea," Kozlov said. "Single combat. You and me, Ghost Eagle. Winner takes all. The hostages, the weapons, everything." "Don't do it," Stone warned. "It's a trap." But Rachel saw Emily Foster's terrified face, saw the other 2 doctors trembling, and made her decision. Agreed. She stepped into the hangar, weapon lowered, but ready. Kozlov smiled and holstered his pistol. "I know all about you," he said, circling slowly. "The pilot who threw away her career for a rescue mission. So predictable, so American, always trying to be heroes. Sometimes heroism is just doing what's necessary. Is that what you tell yourself while mopping floors?" Kozlov laughed. "The mighty Ghost Eagle, reduced to cleaning toilets. How poetic." He struck without warning, a lightning-fast combination that would have dropped most opponents. But Rachel had been expecting it, had read his body language, the subtle shift in weight that preceded attack. She deflected the strikes and countered with an elbow to his ribs, following with a knee strike he barely avoided. They separated, reassessing. "Better than expected," Kozlov admitted. "But you've been out of the game for 2 years. I've been fighting every day." He attacked again, more seriously this time. Rachel gave ground, let him think he was winning, while she studied his patterns. Every fighter had tells, rhythms, preferences. Kozlov favored his right side, protecting an old injury on his left knee. When he overcommitted to a haymaker, she was ready. She ducked under, grabbed his arm, and used his momentum to throw him hard onto the concrete. Before he could recover, she had her knife out, pressed against his throat. "Yield," she said. Kozlov laughed, blood running from his mouth. "You think you've won? Moore wasn't the only mole. The corruption goes deeper than you know. Kill me, and 10 more will take my place. Then I'll stop them too. Will you, from your janitor's closet? Face it, Major, you can't save everyone. You couldn't save your career, you can't save these hostages, and you can't stop what's coming. Watch me." But before she could act, Moore, whom everyone had forgotten, grabbed a fallen weapon and fired, not at Rachel, but at the fuel tanks Kozlov had threatened earlier. "Everyone out!" Stone yelled. Rachel hauled Emily Foster to her feet, pushing her toward the door as flames erupted behind them. The other hostages were already running, Stone covering their retreat. Kozlov used the distraction to break free, limping toward his aircraft. Moore was already aboard, the engines starting. "Iris, stop that plane," Stone ordered. "Negative shot," Iris replied. "Too many friendlies in the line of fire." Rachel watched the Antonov accelerate down the runway. In seconds, Kozlov would escape. Moore would disappear into the Black Ops world, and nothing would change. Unless... She ran toward a nearby hangar where she'd spotted something earlier, an old F-16 Fighting Falcon, probably used for adversary training. It was armed with training rounds, not live ammunition, but the aircraft itself was a weapon. "Rachel, what are you doing?" Stone called. She didn't answer, just climbed into the cockpit. The pre-flight checks would take too long. She'd have to cold start and pray everything worked. Battery on, fuel pumps on, JFS start. The engine began spooling up as Kozlov's plane lifted off. Through her headset, she heard Iris. "Rachel, that F-16 hasn't been serviced in months. You don't know if it's even airworthy. Only one way to find out." The engine reached idle. She released the brakes and taxied toward the runway, not bothering with normal procedures. Kozlov's plane was climbing, turning north toward the Mexican border. "Ghost Eagle, this is Stone. You are not authorized for pursuit. Good thing I'm a civilian then." She pushed the throttle forward, feeling the familiar surge of acceleration. The F-16 lifted off roughly. The controls were sluggish, the engine running hot, but she was airborne. Kozlov's Antonov was faster than it looked, but no cargo plane could outrun a fighter. She closed the distance quickly, pulling alongside. Through the cockpit window, she could see Moore in the co-pilot seat, frantically working a radio, probably calling for help, declaring her a rogue pilot, terrorist, anything to get her shot down. She had no weapons that could bring down the Antonov without killing everyone aboard, including possibly innocent crew members. But she had options. She moved directly in front of the cargo plane, then gradually reduced speed, forcing Kozlov to slow down or risk collision. Standard intercept procedure: force them to land or be forced down. "You're insane," Kozlov's voice crackled over the emergency frequency. "You'll kill us all." "Land at Nellis Air Force Base, or I'll make you land." "With what? Training rounds?" "With this aircraft. I'll ram you if I have to." There was silence. Kozlov knew she meant it. She'd sacrificed her career for strangers. She'd sacrifice her life to stop him. "Ghost Eagle," a new voice came over her headset. Not Stone or Iris, but General Marcus Stone himself. "Major Thompson, Nellis Tower has been notified. Fighter escorts are launching. Stand down and let them handle it." Two F-22 Raptors appeared on her radar, closing fast. Her old aircraft, flown by pilots who now held the job she'd once loved. "Kozlov, you're out of options," she transmitted. "Land now, or the Raptors will splash you." For a moment, she thought he'd run, force the F-22s to shoot him down. But slowly, the Antonov began descending, turning toward Nellis. Rachel maintained position until the cargo plane was on final approach, then peeled off. She didn't have clearance to land at Nellis, and the F-16's engine was now running dangerously hot. "Rachel," Iris's voice came through, "there's a private strip 10 miles east. Can you make it?" She checked her instruments. Engine temperature redlined, oil pressure dropping, hydraulics warning light flickering. Maybe. The F-16 held together just long enough. She dead-sticked the last 1,000 feet, the engine seizing as the wheels touched down. The old fighter rolled to a stop in a cloud of dust and smoke. As she climbed out, she saw the black SUVs already waiting. Stone, Iris, Jake, and his team. They'd gotten the hostages out safely. "That was insane," Stone said. "Brilliant, but insane. It worked. It did. Kozlov and Moore are in custody. The weapons shipment is secured. The hostages are safe. Mission accomplished." Rachel looked at the smoking F-16, then at the team around her. "Now what?" "Now you choose," Stone said. "You've proven yourself 10 times over. The offer stands. Join us. Make this your new mission. Or go back to your mop bucket. Your choice." Rachel thought about it. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her feeling empty. This wasn't her world anymore. The killing, the deception, the constant danger. She'd left it for a reason. "I need to make a call," she said. She borrowed Iris's phone and dialed. Tom answered on the second ring. "Tom, it's Rachel." "Rachel, are you okay? You had us worried." "I'm fine. Listen, about that time off, take as much as you need. Actually, I was thinking, is my shift still available tomorrow? There was a pause. You're coming back? To janitor work? If you'll have me. Rachel, you're a hero. You could do anything, be anything. I know. That's why I choose this. I'll see you tomorrow, Tom. She hung up and turned to Stone. I appreciate the offer, General, but I have a job. People who depend on me. Stone looked disappointed, but not surprised. You're really going back to mopping floors? Someone has to. And sometimes, General, the most important battles are the ones nobody sees. What about Blackbird? There might be other moles. That's your fight. Mine is keeping Fairfield Airport clean and safe, one mop bucket at a time. Jake stepped forward. For what it's worth, Major, it's been an honor. Likewise, Sergeant. Iris offered to fly her back to Fairfield. During the flight, Rachel stared out the window at the desert below, processing everything that had happened. You know they'll keep calling, Iris said. Every time something big comes up, they'll want Ghost Eagle. They can want all they like. Ghost Eagle retired 2 years ago. Now there's just Rachel Thompson, janitor. You can't really believe it's that simple. Why not? I stopped Kozlov, saved the hostages, exposed more, mission accomplished. Now I go back to my life. Your life is mopping floors? My life is service. The form it takes doesn't matter. They landed at Fairfield as the sun was setting. Rachel could see the terminal where, just 2 days ago, she'd been taken hostage while mopping. It felt like a lifetime had passed. You have my number, Iris said. If you ever change your mind, I won't, but thank you. Rachel drove home to find Maverick waiting at the door, annoyed at being left alone for so long. She fed him, then sat on her couch, still wearing the tactical gear she'd sworn she'd never put on again. Her phone, her regular phone, had dozens of messages, interview requests, job offers, even a message from the president's office. She deleted them all. The next morning, she arrived at Fairfield Airport at 5:30 a.m., half an hour before her shift. The employee parking lot was full of news vans again, but she'd learned the service entrance routes that avoided them. Tom was waiting in the break room with fresh coffee and a concerned expression. You sure about this? He asked. Never been more sure of anything. Even after whatever it was you just did, the news is saying you were involved in stopping some terrorist in Nevada. The news says a lot of things. I'm just here to clean. She changed into her janitor uniform, collected her supplies, and headed to the terminal. The bullet holes had been patched, the glass replaced. New tiles covered the bloodstains. To most people, it would look like nothing had happened, but Rachel could see the signs, the slightly different paint texture where bullets had been removed, the new grout lines where blood had soaked too deep to clean, the imperceptible warp in the floor where bodies had fallen. She began mopping, falling into the familiar rhythm, back and forth, methodical, thorough, cleaning away the visible dirt while knowing the invisible stains would always remain. Excuse me? She looked up to find a young Air Force lieutenant standing nervously nearby. Yes? Are you Major Thompson, Ghost Eagle? I'm Rachel. I clean the floors here. But you were a Thunderbird pilot. You flew F-22s. You're a hero. Rachel wrung out her mop. I'm a janitor. Heroes are the people who do their jobs every day without recognition. Like you, Lieutenant. When's the last time someone thanked you for your service? Yesterday, actually. After the news about what you did. And before that? The lieutenant thought. Months ago, maybe. Exactly. But you served every day in between, didn't you? Without thanks, without recognition. That's heroism. But you could be flying again. You could have your commission back. I could. But then who would clean these floors? Who would make sure this terminal is safe and sanitary for the thousands of people who pass through every day? Someone else could do it. Someone else could fly planes too. We all serve where we're needed, Lieutenant. Right now, I'm needed here. The lieutenant saluted, which Rachel returned automatically, then walked away shaking his head. As the morning wore on, more people recognized her, wanted photos, asked questions. She responded politely, but kept working, never stopping, never letting the attention interfere with her duties. Around noon, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, not the mysterious voice from before, but someone new. Operation Blackstone files declassified. Your grounding officially reversed. Full honors restored. Secti def. She deleted the message and kept mopping. At 2 p.m., as she was emptying trash bins, Colonel Wells appeared in full dress uniform. Major Thompson, Colonel, how's the shoulder? Fine. Listen, I wanted you to know, the 3 aid workers you saved yesterday are asking about you. They want to thank you personally. They're safe. That's all that matters. Also, Kozlov broke during interrogation. He gave up his entire network. Dozens of arms dealers, terrorist financiers, corrupt officials. You didn't just save 3 lives yesterday, you probably saved thousands. Good. Wells studied her as she continued working. You really are going to keep doing this, aren't you? Even knowing what you could be instead? Colonel, can I ask you something? Of course. What's the most important part of an aircraft? Wells frowned. The engine? The wings? The bolts? Thousands of tiny bolts that nobody ever thinks about. Without them, the whole thing falls apart. That's what I am now, one of the bolts. Invisible, unglamorous, but necessary. You could be the whole damn plane. I've been the plane. Now I'm happy being a bolt. Wells extended his hand, which Rachel shook. It's been an honor, Major Thompson. Likewise, Colonel. As the afternoon stretched into evening, the airport slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Passengers hurrying to gates, families reuniting at arrivals, business continuing as if armed gangsters had never taken over the terminal. Rachel's shift ended at 3 p.m. As she returned her supplies to the janitor's closet, she found an envelope taped to her locker. Inside was a photo. The 3 aid workers, safe and smiling, holding a sign that read, "Thank you, Ghost Eagle." She smiled and tucked the photo into her pocket, next to the old photo of her squadron. Walking to her car, she passed Gate 7 where a military transport was loading. Through the window, she could see young airmen preparing for deployment. They looked so young, so eager, so unaware of how war would change them. One of them saw her and waved. She waved back, and for a moment, she remembered what it felt like to be that young, that certain that she was making a difference. She still was making a difference, just differently. As she drove home, her phone rang. The caller ID showed her mother. "Hi, Mom." "Rachel, I saw the news. You saved those doctors. You're a hero again." "I never stopped being who I am, Mom. I just changed how I express it." "Are you happy?" Rachel thought about the question as she watched planes take off from Fairfield, their contrails painting white lines across the evening sky. "Yeah, Mom. I really am." That night, she sat on her couch with Maverick, watching the news coverage of Kozlov's arrest. They showed footage of the F-16 pursuit, grainy and distant. The reporters speculated about the mysterious pilot who'd risked everything to stop a terrorist. Her phone buzzed with one final message from the unknown number that had started it all. "The offer remains open, always." She deleted it without responding. The next morning, she was back at work at 6 a.m., mop in hand, bucket at her side. The terminal was busy with early morning flights. Business people rushed past without seeing her. Families struggled with luggage. Life continued. And Rachel Thompson, former major, former Thunderbird pilot, former Ghost Eagle, continued to clean. Because someone had to. Because service came in many forms. Because sometimes the most heroic thing wasn't the dramatic rescue, or the aerial combat, or the last-second save. Sometimes it was just showing up, day after day, doing the work that needed doing, without recognition or reward. As she mopped the same spot where she'd been held at gunpoint just 3 days earlier, she heard a small voice. "Miss Rachel?" She turned to find Emily, the 5-year-old from the hostage crisis, holding her grandmother Grace's hand. "Hello, Emily. Grandma says you're cleaning up the bad things that happen." "That's right. But the bad men are gone now. The mess they made isn't. Someone has to clean it up." Emily thought about this with the seriousness only a child could muster. "When I grow up, I want to be like you. A janitor, a helper, someone who fixes things." Rachel knelt down to Emily's level. "That's the best thing anyone can be." As Emily and Grace walked away, Rachel returned to her work. The floors needed cleaning, the trash needed emptying, the windows needed washing. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't exciting, it would never make the news again. But it was necessary. It was honest. It was service. And for Rachel Thompson, that was enough. The sun climbed higher over Fairfield Airport, its light streaming through the clean windows she'd just finished washing. Planes continued to take off and land, carrying people to destinations unknown. And in the terminal, almost invisible but absolutely essential, a janitor continued her work. Because every eagle, grounded or flying, served in their own way. And sometimes, the most important flights were the ones that never left the ground.